Gene Watson has been one of country music's purest voices, a man whose songs about heartbreak, hope, and everyday struggle became the soundtrack to countless American lives. Known for timeless classics like Farewell Party and Love in the Hot Afternoon, Watson earned his reputation as the singer's singer, admired by legends like George Jones and Vince Gill for his unmatched phrasing and emotion. But behind the smooth, soulful voice that could melt even the coldest hearts lies a story filled with quiet pain and personal tragedy. At 82, Gene's life has taken a somber turn. Once the embodiment of traditional country authenticity, he now faces challenges that even his heartfelt lyrics could never have prepared him for. From devastating losses to heartbreaking health struggles, Watson's later years have become a reflection of the very sorrow he once sang about. Fans who grew up listening to him are now witnessing a man fighting to keep his voice and his spirit alive amid the passage of time. While many remember his glory days on the stage, few know the private battles he has endured away from the spotlight. Behind the warm smile and humble Texas charm, Gene Watson has quietly carried burdens that would break most men. His journey from a poor mechanic to a country legend is inspiring, but what he's enduring now is nothing short of heartbreaking. This is the untold story of Gene Watson's rise, fall, and the quiet tragedies that have shaped the final chapters of his life. Gene Watson's journey into the heart of country music began long before fame ever found him. Born in Palestine, Texas in 1943, he was raised in poverty, surrounded by the raw, unfiltered sounds of honky-tonk bars, church choirs, and roadside jukeboxes. His family moved constantly, chasing work across the state, and music became the one constant in a life of instability. As a child, Gene found peace in the harmonies of Hank Williams and Lefty Frizzle, practicing late into the night until his voice carried the same ache as the songs he loved. Before the world ever knew his name, Gene worked long hours as an auto mechanic, fixing cars by day and performing in small Texas clubs by night. His deep, velvety voice caught the attention of anyone who heard it. Pure, rich, and unmistakably country. He wasn't chasing fame or fortune. He just wanted to sing. That humility would later define his entire career. In 1969, he released his first independent single, but it wasn't until 1975 that Love in the Hot Afternoon catapulted him into national fame. The song, with its sensual lyrics and Gene's smooth delivery, stood out in an era when country music was shifting toward pop. Critics and fans alike hailed him as the savior of traditional country music. Songs like Paper Rosie, 14 Karat Mind, and Farewell Party became instant classics. His voice wasn't flashy. It was sincere, steeped in emotion, and carried the pain of real experience. When Gene sang about heartbreak, listeners felt like he was telling their story. But while fame brought success, it also came with sacrifice. The grueling tour schedules, endless recording sessions, and pressure to stay relevant began taking a toll. Gene often said that the road could be a lonely place, even when surrounded by adoring fans. Behind the microphone, he was strong and confident. Behind closed doors, he struggled with exhaustion and moments of deep self-doubt. In interviews, Watson often spoke about his deep respect for artists like George Jones and Merle Haggard, men who, like him, believed that country music should come from the soul, not from studio polish or commercial trends. "You can't fake country music," Gene once said. "You either lived it or you didn't." Those words became his mantra. Even as younger artists rose to fame with flashy videos and crossover hits, Gene stayed true to his roots. He refused to compromise his sound, even when record labels pressured him to go modern. That integrity earned him lifelong fans, but it also meant his career didn't always receive the attention it deserved. By the 1990s, as the music industry shifted toward pop country, Watson found himself fighting to keep traditional country alive. His record sales dropped, and radio airplay faded. Yet he never stopped performing. He toured tirelessly, often performing in small-town theaters and fairs, keeping his connection with the audience alive. Those who saw him live said that time seemed to stand still when he sang. Despite the challenges, Gene never let bitterness take over. His love for the music and for the people who supported him never wavered. He often credited his fans for keeping him going during the lean years, saying, "They believed in me when no one else did." But as the years went on, Watson's health began to decline. Decades of performing had worn him down physically, and whispers began to circulate among fans about his ability to continue touring. Still, he pressed on, determined to give his audience everything he had left. Little did anyone know. The battles he was fighting off stage were far more painful than anyone could have imagined, a struggle that would soon reveal the heartbreaking reality behind the man known as the voice of tradition. As Gene Watson's fame grew, so did the pressures that came with it. The man who once sang for the love of the craft now found himself trapped in the very world he had dreamed of entering. Behind the spotlight, Gene was quietly fighting a battle that very few ever noticed. A battle against exhaustion, disappointment, and the relentless demands of an industry that often forgets its own legends. Touring took a tremendous toll on him. For years, Gene traveled from town to town, often performing 6 or 7 nights a week. He would wake up sore, drive hundreds of miles, perform for hours, then get up the next morning and do it all over again. To many, it looked like the glamorous life of a country star: bright lights, cheering fans, and sold-out shows. But for Gene, it was a grind that drained his spirit and tested his health. By the late 1980s, Gene had already faced several personal and professional setbacks. Financial troubles began to haunt him when record sales dipped, and his label failed to promote his new albums properly. The country music scene was changing fast. Younger, flashier artists were taking over, and traditional voices like Gene's were being pushed aside. He once said in an interview, "They want something they can sell quick. But I'm not something you sell. I'm something you feel." That authenticity became both his greatest strength and his biggest curse. The industry wanted pop country hits. Gene wanted storytelling. Record executives urged him to modernize his sound, but he refused. "If I can't sing country music the way it's meant to be sung," he told one producer, "then I'd rather not sing at all." That stubborn honesty cost him major deals, but earned him something more valuable: respect. Away from the stage, Gene's life wasn't easy. He was a private man, rarely discussing his personal struggles. But close friends revealed that Gene had battled health problems for years. There were whispers of severe fatigue, breathing issues, and complications from years of long nights and constant touring. Even when doctors advised him to rest, he pushed through, saying that the stage was the only place he truly felt alive. In his quiet moments, he found comfort in faith and family. His wife, Mattie, stood by him through every storm. She was the anchor that kept him grounded, the voice that reminded him who he really was. When asked about his marriage, Gene once said, "She saw me when I had nothing and still believed I'd make it." That kind of love doesn't fade with time. Their bond became his refuge from the chaos of fame. Yet even with her unwavering support, Gene couldn't escape the weight of time. The music industry he had once helped define was changing beyond recognition. Radio stations that once played his hits now ignored him. Concert venues grew smaller and the spotlight dimmed. But Gene didn't stop. He believed that as long as someone still wanted to hear him sing, he would keep going. In many ways, Gene Watson's career became a reflection of his character. Strong, humble, and unwavering in integrity, he may not have chased the riches or the spotlight, but he earned something far more enduring: the love of true country fans who never forgot what real country music sounded like. By the time he reached his late 70s, Gene's body began to show signs of the price he had paid. Years of singing in smoky bars, endless travel, and pushing his limits left scars that could not be hidden. His voice, though still powerful, carried a deeper pain, one that hinted at the silent battles he had fought alone. Fans started to notice the change. His performances grew slower, his movements more deliberate. Yet every time he stepped on stage, he gave his all, sometimes wiping tears as he sang "Farewell Party," knowing that the song's haunting lyrics now mirrored his own reality. As whispers about his declining health began to circulate, Gene remained silent. He never wanted sympathy, only respect for the music he loved. But soon the truth about his struggles would emerge. revealing just how much pain he had endured behind that warm Texas smile. As Gene Watson entered his 80s, he stood as one of the last true voices of classic country music. A man who had seen the industry rise, evolve, and drift far from its roots. But behind the curtain of his enduring smile and unwavering humility, Gene was engaged in the most difficult chapter of his life. His health, which he had quietly struggled with for years, began to fail in ways that could no longer be ignored. The first signs came gradually: shortness of breath, fatigue, and a lingering cough that refused to go away. At first, Gene brushed it off as the natural wear and tear of a long career. After all, he had spent decades performing in smoke-filled honky-tonks, driving thousands of miles between gigs, and pushing his body beyond its limits. But as time passed, it became clear that his body was trying to tell him something. Doctors warned him that the years of strain had taken a toll on his lungs and heart. The lifestyle that came with the road, late nights, minimal rest, and constant travel, had finally caught up to him. Still, Gene was reluctant to slow down. "If I stop singing," he once told a close friend, "I might as well stop breathing." Singing wasn't just his career, it was his lifeline. Even as his condition worsened, Gene refused to cancel shows. Fans would watch in awe as he stepped onto the stage, visibly frail, yet still commanding the same emotional power he had always possessed. His voice, though slightly weaker, still carried the warmth and sincerity that had made him a legend. At times, he would struggle through a verse, pausing to catch his breath, but never once did he walk away from a performance unfinished. Those who saw him in his final years said there was something profoundly spiritual about his presence. It was as if he knew his time was limited, and each concert was his way of saying goodbye, not just to the fans, but to the life he had lived so completely. When he performed Farewell Party, his signature song, it no longer felt like a story about heartbreak. It was about him, a man bidding farewell to the stage, to the world, and to the life that had defined him. In one of his last interviews, Gene spoke candidly about legacy. "I never wanted to be the biggest star," he said softly. "I just wanted to be remembered as someone who sang from the heart. I want people to say, 'That man was real.'" It was a simple statement, but it captured everything he had stood for: honesty, humility, and authenticity. Friends and fellow musicians rallied around him as his health declined. Many called him the gentleman of country music, not just for his talent, but for his kindness. Unlike others who let fame change them, Gene remained grounded. He took time to meet fans after shows, signing autographs and sharing stories, even when he was visibly tired. As the end drew closer, Gene began spending more time at home in Texas, surrounded by family, friends, and memories of a life well lived. His wife, Mattie, remained his constant companion, caring for him with quiet devotion. On good days, he would sit on the porch with his guitar, softly strumming old melodies while humming lyrics that had shaped his journey. In those final months, Gene found peace in the simplest things: the sound of rain on the roof, the laughter of grandchildren, the comfort of prayer. Music had given him everything, but now he was ready to let go, trusting that his songs would live on long after he was gone. When news broke of Gene Watson's passing, tributes poured in from across the country. Fellow artists, old friends, and fans from around the world shared memories of the man who had kept traditional country alive with nothing but his voice and his heart. His legacy was not just in his records, but in the authenticity he brought to every note. And for those who truly knew his story, Farewell Party became more than just a song. It became a prophecy, a goodbye letter written long before the end. When Gene Watson passed, the country music world didn't just lose a singer. It lost a soul who embodied everything pure about the genre. In an age of overproduced tracks and fleeting fame, Gene stood as a reminder that true artistry came from life experience, emotion, and truth. His death left a silence that no modern voice could quite fill. Yet, as the days and weeks passed, it became clear that his legacy would endure far beyond his final performance. In the months following his passing, tributes poured in from across the music industry. Country legends like George Strait, Alan Jackson, and Vince Gill publicly honored him, calling him the last of the real ones. Younger artists credited him as their inspiration, a guiding light in an era when authenticity often takes a back seat to commercial appeal. Many fans shared personal stories online of how his music had carried them through heartbreak, loss, and hard times. For them, Gene Watson wasn't just a singer. He was a friend who understood their pain. But perhaps what made Gene's legacy so powerful was not the number of hits he had, but the way he carried himself throughout his career. He never chased fame, never bowed to trends, and never compromised the integrity of his sound. In interviews, he often said, "If you have to change who you are to be successful, then success isn't worth it." That statement became the philosophy of his entire life. Even as his health declined, Gene continued to record and release music. His final album, a collection of gospel and traditional country songs, was more than just a record. It was his message to the world. The songs reflected a man at peace with his journey, a man who had endured hardship but never lost faith. In one of the album's standout tracks, he sang, "I've walked through the storm, but the Lord was my guide." The lyrics felt prophetic, a final reflection from someone who had truly lived every word he sang. His funeral, held in his home, state of Texas, was a simple and heartfelt ceremony, just as he would have wanted. Friends and fellow musicians gathered to celebrate his life with music, laughter, and tears. There were no extravagant displays or star-studded performances, only sincerity. As one longtime friend said during the service, "Gene didn't want us to mourn him, he wanted us to keep the music alive." And that's exactly what they did. In the years that followed, Gene Watson's influence only grew stronger. His songs became timeless standards, played by country stations that recognized his contributions to keeping the heart of country music beating. Younger artists began covering his classics, introducing his voice to new generations who were hungry for something real. Beyond the charts and accolades, Gene's true success lay in how he touched people's lives. Fans remembered how approachable he was, how he always took time to talk after shows, and how he treated everyone, from industry executives to road crew members, with the same respect. He was a man who understood humility in a world that often forgot it. Even now, long after his passing, Gene Watson's story continues to inspire. His journey, from a poor Texas boy fixing cars to one of the most respected voices in country, music serves as a testament to perseverance and authenticity. He may have faced tragedy, illness, and industry rejection, but he never let it define him. Instead, he turned pain into poetry and struggle into song. In the end, Gene Watson's Farewell Party wasn't just his signature hit. It was the story of his life. He sang of goodbye long before he left us, and when he finally did, the world understood the depth of his message. The tragedy of Gene Watson's life wasn't just that it ended. It was that a voice so pure, so rare, could never truly be replaced. But somewhere in a small Texas town, the echoes of his songs still play softly on an old jukebox, and the words still ring true. "We'll gather flowers, yes, for my farewell party," reminding us that though Gene may be gone, his music, and the soul behind it, will never fade.